They called him a god. For years, Superman saved them. Earthquakes stopped. Missiles caught. Cities protected. He asked for nothing. He demanded nothing. He simply showed up and saved lives. That was his mistake. Because humanity does not worship what it cannot control. It fears it. The question started quietly. Who gave him authority? Who would stop him if he ever stopped caring? Governments ran simulations. Military strategists planned scenarios. Every simulation ended the same way. Earth lost. So they made a choice. They invited him to a meeting. Underground, shielded, reinforced. He came willingly. No armor, no anger, just trust. The gas filled the room without warning. Kryptonite, the strongest being on Earth, collapsed to his knees. The world watched live as their greatest hero was placed in chains. Some cried, some cheered, most stared in disbelief. They launched him into space, buried in lead, drowned in red sun radiation, sent to a planet designed to kill what the universe feared most. They called it justice. They called it safety. They were wrong, because Superman did not die. He crashed onto a world of monsters, warlords, and nightmares. Powerless, hunted, alone. And instead of breaking, he did something impossible. He became a legend again, not through strength, through choice. This is the story of how a god became human, and how a human became something greater. The skies over Metropolis had never looked more peaceful. Blue stretched endlessly overhead, silent and still, the kind of calm that made people believe everything was finally under control. But peace has a habit of lying. For years, Superman had been everywhere. He stopped earthquakes before cities collapsed. He caught missiles midair and redirected them into empty oceans. He pulled burning planes from the sky, like a parent lifting a fallen child. He never asked for thanks. He never demanded loyalty or recognition. He simply showed up when the world needed saving, and then he vanished back into the clouds. That was the problem, because when one man can do everything, the world eventually starts to wonder what happens when he chooses to do something else. The question started quietly, whispered in boardrooms and muttered on late-night broadcasts. Who gave him this authority? Who decided when he would intervene and when he would watch from above? Who would stop him if he ever stopped caring about the rest of them? At first, Superman ignored the noise. He always had. Fear was deeply human. Doubt was natural. He believed that time would prove his intentions, just as it always had before. Every life saved was evidence. Every disaster averted was testimony. He was wrong. The fear did not fade with each rescue. It grew with every demonstration of power they could not match. Talk shows debated him like he was a weapon waiting to discharge. Governments held closed-door meetings where his name was spoken in hushed, urgent tones. Think tanks ran simulations where Superman was not positioned as the hero swooping in to save the day, but as the enemy descending to end it. Every simulation ended the same way. Earth lost. He was faster than any missile they could design or fire. He was stronger than any army they could mobilize or train. He was immune to every weapon their greatest minds had ever conceived or built. And worst of all, the thing that kept generals awake at night and made presidents grip their desks until their knuckles whitened. He did not age. He was not a temporary problem that would solve itself with patience. He was permanent. That scared them more than anything he had ever actually done. Then came the law. It did not say his name. It did not have to. Everyone knew who it targeted. They called it the Global Metahuman Containment Act. Officially, the legislation was framed around oversight and accountability, around shared security protocols and international cooperation in the face of extraordinary threats. Unofficially, it was about one thing and one thing only: Superman. When the law passed with unanimous international support, the world celebrated in the streets. People told themselves this meant safety would be guaranteed. Balance would be restored. Control would finally belong to humanity again. Superman felt something else entirely as he watched the celebrations from above. Betrayal. Still, he did not resist. When the United Nations formally requested a meeting, he came willingly. He wore no armor. He carried no weapons. He displayed no anger in his expression. He arrived with the same calm demeanor he wore when pulling children from collapsed buildings and reuniting them with weeping parents. The meeting room was located deep underground, shielded from surveillance, reinforced against forces that could level mountains. He noticed every detail immediately, cataloging them without consciously trying. Lead-lined walls that blocked his vision, red light panels hidden in the ceiling fixtures, ready to activate at a moment's notice. Emergency seals on every door designed to contain rather than protect. He understood what this room really was, a trap waiting to be sprung. "You're afraid," he said quietly to the assembled representatives. No one met his eyes. No one could. They talked for hours about responsibility and its limits, about power and its proper constraints, about trust and how easily it could be broken. Superman listened to every word. He answered every question honestly. He reminded them gently of every life he had saved, every city he had protected, every apocalypse he had prevented while they slept peacefully in their beds. It did not matter. Fear had already made the decision for them. The gas filled the room without warning, invisible to his eyes, odorless to his senses. Kryptonite. Superman staggered backward. His breath hitched violently in his chest. His knees struck the cold floor with a sound that would echo through history books for generations to come. He tried to stand. His body refused. The strongest being on Earth collapsed like a dying man in front of the people he had spent his entire life protecting. Guards rushed in wearing sealed combat armor designed specifically for this moment. Red sun emitters activated with a mechanical hum. Energy cuffs snapped around his wrists with brutal efficiency. Each restraint felt like gravity itself crushing down on his bones. Cameras were rolling. Somewhere in the chaos, a decision had been made to broadcast this moment live across every screen on the planet. The world watched in real time as Superman, Earth's greatest hero, was placed in chains. Some people cried openly in the streets. Some cheered like they had won a war. Most just stared at their screens in disbelief, unable to process what they were witnessing. He did not fight. That hurt them more than if he had resisted. That made them question, just for a moment, whether they were doing the right thing. They transported him in a capsule designed for extinction-level threats. Layers of lead shielding surrounded him. Kryptonite filters pumped toxins into the air he breathed. Red sun radiation flooded every inch of the container, ensuring his powers remained suppressed completely. The capsule launched into space before the public could fully process what their governments had just done in their name. Earth exhaled. They told themselves it was finally over. The threat had been neutralized. Safety had been restored. They were wrong. Superman regained consciousness in darkness. Not the peaceful darkness of restful sleep, but the heavy, suffocating kind that presses against your thoughts and makes you question whether you still exist. Every muscle in his body screamed with pain he had never experienced before. His heartbeat felt slow and weak, struggling against the radiation flooding his prison. He could barely lift his head. The restraints were still active. Red sun energy continued flooding the chamber without pause or mercy. His powers were gone completely, stripped away as if they had never existed. For the first time since childhood on a small farm in Kansas, he felt small. A voice echoed through the chamber, cold and mechanical, stripped of all humanity, unfamiliar and uncaring. Kal-El of Krypton, you have been deemed a Class Omega existential threat by unanimous international consensus. The words hit harder than any physical blow he had ever received. Earth has voted unanimously for your permanent removal from the solar system. The capsule shuddered violently as it entered hyperspace, leaving everything he had ever known behind. Superman closed his eyes. He thought of Metropolis gleaming in the morning light, of the people who waved when he flew overhead, of Lois and the way she smiled when she saw through his disguises, of the sound of wind against his face when he flew just above the clouds, free and purposeful. "They're making a mistake," he whispered into the darkness. The voice did not respond. The machine had no interest in his observations or his pain. Hours passed, or days. Time lost all meaning inside the coffin they had built specifically for him. Then came the impact. The capsule crashed with brutal, world-ending force. Metal screamed as the structure tore apart. Systems failed in cascading waves of sparks and smoke. The restraints disengaged with a mechanical hiss. The door blew open. Harsh red light flooded in from outside. Superman crawled out onto cracked, blood-red soil beneath a burning crimson sky. The air was thick and heavy with particles that burned his lungs. Every breath felt like lifting stones. Gravity pressed down harder than Earth's, demanding more from his weakened body. This was not Earth. This was not anywhere close to home. In the distance, something roared. Not an animal sound. Something worse. Something that carried intelligence behind its hunger. A predator. Superman pushed himself to his knees, trembling with effort. No powers remained. No strength beyond what his battered body could still provide. Cuts formed on his exposed skin where the atmosphere itself seemed to reject his presence. A shadow moved across the ground. Huge. Fast. Watching. The realization settled in slowly, horribly, inevitably. They had not simply imprisoned him. They had sent him somewhere far worse than any prison. A planet designed specifically to kill what the universe feared most. Superman stood anyway, forcing his legs to support him. Because even powerless and alone and abandoned by everything he had protected, he was still Superman. And the hunt had just begun. The red sun never blinked. It hung in the alien sky like a wound that refused to heal, pouring its merciless light across every inch of the planet below. Every ray drained what little strength Superman had left, pressing him down constantly, reminding him with every labored breath that here, on this world built for punishment, he was nothing special. The ground beneath his feet cracked and shifted as he walked, alive in ways no world should be. Jagged rock spines rose like bones from the crimson soil. The air tasted metallic, sharp enough to burn his lungs with every inhalation. Somewhere far away, something screamed, and the sound did not fade. It multiplied, echoing back from every direction until he could not determine where the threat originated. Superman took his first real step forward. Pain followed immediately. His muscles shook with the simple effort of moving. His balance wavered on the uneven terrain. Gravity here was heavier and denser, engineered or evolved to crush the weak and punish the strong. Every movement demanded effort that would have been meaningless on Earth. Every breath was earned rather than given. This planet did not want him here. That was when he heard the chains. Not the ones they had used to bind him during transport, but the ones still hanging from his wrists where the restraints had partially released. They were not just remnants of captivity. They were a message. You are prey now. A low rumble rolled across the barren land. The ground vibrated beneath his boots. Whatever was approaching was not attempting to hide. It wanted him to know it was coming. It wanted him to run. Superman turned toward the sound instead of away from it. The creature emerged from behind a ridge of black stone, towering over him by several meters. Armored naturally, with hide that looked like layered steel fused with bone. For glowing eyes locked onto him with predatory focus. Its mouth split open slowly to reveal rows of teeth designed not to kill quickly, but to make the process last. The predator planet earned its name honestly. The creature charged. Superman reacted on instinct born from a lifetime of combat. He rolled aside just as the beast slammed into the ground where he had been standing, sending shards of rock into the air like shrapnel. The impact alone would have flattened a military tank. His heart pounded against his ribs. No heat vision to burn through its hide. No super strength to match its power. No invulnerability to shrug off its attacks. Just timing. Just will. The creature swung again with claws that could tear through steel. Superman ducked, feeling the displaced air inches from his face. He grabbed a loose shard of stone from the ground and drove it into the creature's nearest eye, with all the strength his human-level body possessed. The roar that followed shook the sky itself. Black blood sprayed across the red ground. The beast staggered backward, blind on one side, but not defeated, not even close to defeated. It lashed out wildly, catching Superman across the chest with a glancing blow. Pain exploded through his body. He flew backward and crashed hard into the rocky ground, ribs screaming in protest, vision blurring at the edges. The taste of his own blood filled his mouth. He forced himself up anyway. The creature lunged again, ready to finish what it had started, and stopped. A spear burst through its skull from behind with precise, practiced accuracy. The massive body collapsed at Superman's feet with a thunderous crash that shook the ground for meters in every direction. Silence followed. Then movement. Figures emerged from the rocks surrounding him. Dozens of them, all different species, all bearing scars, all watching him with the same expression on their varied faces. Not fear, assessment. Aliens of every shape and size imaginable. Some armored in salvaged materials. Some limping from wounds that would never fully heal. Some barely standing through sheer will alone. Prisoners and survivors who had learned to exist on a world designed to kill them. One of them stepped forward, tall and thin, with eyes glowing faintly blue beneath a cracked helmet that had seen better centuries. "You should be dead," the alien said flatly. Superman wiped black blood from his split lip. "I get that a lot." A ripple of quiet laughter passed through the gathered group. Not joy, something harder and more weathered. Something that had been forgotten and was now remembering itself. They took him with them, not as a guest to be welcomed, not as a prisoner to be watched, as a test to be evaluated. Their settlement was carved into the side of a canyon, hidden from the sky and the things that hunted from above. Makeshift shelters built from crashed ship wreckage, weapons crafted from monster bones and salvaged technology. Fires burning with strange blue flames that provided warmth without smoke. This was what survival looked like on a world designed for death. Superman learned quickly. This planet was a dumping ground for the universe's nightmares. Warlords who had ruled too brutally for civilized space to tolerate. Assassins who could not be controlled by any government. Creatures too dangerous to execute safely. And heroes who had been deemed too powerful for the comfort of lesser beings. On Predator Planet, strength was the only currency that mattered. Mercy was considered weakness incarnate. Killing was the law that governed everything. Superman broke all three rules. He refused to kill, no matter the provocation. When raids came from rival factions, he fought to disable rather than destroy. When injured prisoners were left behind by their fleeing companions, he carried them back. When food was scarce and portions were contested, he ate last or not at all. At first, they thought he was insane. Then they started watching him more closely. Then they started listening to his words. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into something resembling routine. His body adapted to the harsh conditions. Not enough to regain his powers under the red sun's constant drain, but enough to survive what the planet threw at him. The chains still hanging from his wrists became tools. He learned to use their weight as weapons, their reach as extensions of his arms. The red sun never stopped watching from above. Neither did something else. High above the canyon, in a fortress of bone and metal built from the remains of crashed warships, the ruler of the planet observed the new arrival. Massive screens displayed every angle of Superman's struggles. The tyrant smiled. He had ruled this world for centuries. He had broken every legend that had ever risen against him. He had turned hope into a poison that killed those foolish enough to swallow it. But this was something new. A being without powers, refusing to kill, inspiring others just by standing back up after every fall. Dangerous. Release the hunters, the tyrant ordered. That night, the sky screamed. Ships descended from above, cutting through the red clouds like blades seeking flesh. Creatures poured out of the vessels, faster and smarter than the natural predators, trained for a single purpose. This was not survival anymore. It was a message. Superman stood at the front of the settlement as alarms rang and shadows closed in from every direction. "We can run," someone said behind him. "Hide in the deep caves." He shook his head slowly. "They won't stop," Superman said. "They never do. Running only delays the inevitable." The hunters attacked. The battle was chaos incarnate. Blades clashed against bone weapons. Monsters roared as they fell. Prisoners screamed and died. Superman moved through it all, not as a god dispensing judgment, but as a shield absorbing punishment. He blocked strikes meant for others, took wounds that should have killed him, kept fighting long after his body begged him to fall and stay down. And something changed. Not in him, in them. They fought harder, smarter, together. For the first time on this planet built for isolation and violence, hope fought back. By dawn, the canyon was silent. The hunters lay broken across the blood-stained ground. Superman collapsed to his knees, exhausted beyond words, bleeding from wounds he had lost count of. The survivors gathered around him in a circle. They did not call him a god. They did not call him a weapon. They called him leader. Far above in his fortress, the tyrant's smile vanished from his scarred face. "Interesting," he muttered, "because on a planet built to break monsters and bury legends, a man was becoming something far more dangerous. A symbol. Pain became routine. Superman woke up every day already hurting in places he had not known could hurt. Bruises never fully healed before new ones formed. Cuts stayed open longer than they should have, weeping and threatening infection. His muscles felt heavier with each passing sunrise beneath the merciless red sky. On Earth, pain had been temporary, a brief inconvenience before his body restored itself. Here, pain was a constant companion that walked beside him. Still, he stood. The settlement changed because of that simple, stubborn act. Fights that once ended in blood and death now ended in restraint and grudging respect. Prisoners who had survived alone for years began moving in groups for mutual protection. Weapons meant only for killing were reshaped into tools for defense and building. Slowly, against the very nature of the planet itself, something fragile and unprecedented began to exist. Trust. Not everyone accepted it. Whispers followed him through the canyon corridors carved from rock. Some called him weak behind his back. Others called him a liar. Just another tyrant pretending to be different until he gained enough power to reveal his true nature. On Predator Planet, hope was considered dangerous. It made you careless. It made you vulnerable. Superman understood that fear better than anyone. He did not preach about redemption. He did not promise escape from their exile. He just showed up when things went wrong. When a raid hit the outer shelters at night, he was there. When a young alien collapsed from exhaustion during a hunt, he carried them back. When two rival species nearly killed each other over a disputed food cache, he stepped between them and absorbed the blows himself. Word spread across the planet, through blood-soaked arenas and wastelands where survival was measured in kills. A story traveled. There was a man under the red sun who refused to become a monster. They began calling him the man without the cape. The tyrant heard the name. It amused him at first. Legends rose and died every cycle on this world. The planet fed on them and ground their bones into dust. But this one lingered. It grew. And worse, it spread into territories that answered only to the tyrant himself. That made it personal. The order was simple. Break him. The traps came first. Pads Superman used regularly began collapsing without warning. Hunting zones were seeded with beasts engineered to sense his particular presence. Snipers took shots from impossible distances, not to kill him directly, but to wound the people around him. The message was clear. Choose your morality or choose their lives. Superman chose without hesitation. He walked into the traps. Every time, his body became a map of scars. A slash across his back from a plasma whip. A deep burn along his arm where red sun energy overloaded a generator in his hands. A shattered shoulder he set himself because no one else possessed the medical knowledge. He never complained. that scared them more than anger ever could. One night, the sky darkened unnaturally. The red sun dimmed slightly, like a dying ember struggling to stay lit. The air crackled with unfamiliar energy. Superman felt it. Not strength returning, something stirring. A flicker. He ignored it. The attack came at dawn. The tyrant's champions descended on the settlement. Not hunters, not beasts, warriors, each one bred for a single purpose, to kill legends. They tore through defenses effortlessly. Bone walls shattered. Fires died. Screams echoed through the canyon. Superman ran toward the sound. He fought like a man possessed, chains swinging, body moving on instinct alone. He disarmed one champion and used the weapon to block a killing blow meant for a child-sized alien huddling behind him. The weapon shattered. So did his arm. He screamed, but he did not fall. He used his body as a barrier, standing between the champions and the settlement entrance. Blow after blow landed. Bones cracked. Blood soaked into the dust. And still he stood. The champions hesitated. They had never seen prey refuse to break. That hesitation cost them. The prisoners surged forward together, not as trained fighters, but as people protecting something they believed in. Overwhelmed, the champions retreated, dragging their wounded with them. The canyon fell silent. Superman collapsed. They thought he was dead. They gathered around him, quietly. No cheers, no victory cries, just fear. Then he breathed, weak, shallow, alive. They carried him into the deepest chamber of the canyon. For days, he drifted in and out of consciousness. Fever burned through him. His body fought itself. And during one of those moments, the red light shifted. Just for a second. Blue. His eyes snapped open. Power rushed through him like a memory trying to wake up. Not enough to lift a mountain. Not enough to fly. But enough to heal. Enough to survive. When he woke fully, the settlement stared at him like he had returned from the dead. "You should have broken," someone whispered. Superman sat up slowly. "I know." That night, he spoke to them. Not as a leader. Not as a god. As a man. "I won't ask you to follow me," he said. "I won't ask you to fight. But this planet survives on fear. If we keep feeding it, it wins." Silence followed. Then one by one, they stepped forward. Not warriors. Believers. High above, the tyrant watched the feeds in growing rage. The red sun fluctuation had not gone unnoticed. "He's adapting," the tyrant snarled. "No," his advisor replied. "He's inspiring." The tyrant crushed the console with one massive hand. "Prepare the arena," he ordered. "If he wants to be a symbol, we'll make an example." Deep beneath the planet's surface, ancient machines awakened. A structure older than the prison itself began to rise. The arena of judgment, a place where legends were erased. Superman stood beneath the red sky, feeling the faint pulse of power in his veins. He knew what was coming, and for the first time since Earth betrayed him, he smiled. The arena rose from the planet like a scar reopening. Metal and bone fused together, pulled from beneath the surface by ancient machines that screamed as they worked. Towers ringed the structure, each one packed with spectators, prisoners, hunters, warlords, drawn by one promise. Only one would leave alive. The red sun burned overhead, dimmer than before, flickering like it was struggling to hold its grip. Superman felt at the moment he stepped onto the cracked stone floor of the arena. Not strength, not flight, potential. The tyrant appeared above them, seated on a throne forged from the remains of fallen champions. Massive, armored, his presence alone bent the air. "Kal-El of Krypton," he boomed, his voice echoing through the arena. "You have disrupted the balance of this world." Superman looked up, unafraid. This world never had balance. Laughter thundered from the stands. The tyrant's eyes narrowed. "You will fight," he said. "You will kill. Or everyone you inspired will die screaming." The gates opened. The first challenger charged, a creature of pure muscle and rage, its skin reinforced with red sun tech. Superman met it head-on. The impact rattled the arena. He fought carefully, efficiently, every move chosen to disable not destroy. The crowd roared in frustration as the creature fell unconscious instead of dead. The tyrant scowled. The second challenger was worse, faster, smarter, blades laced with energy that tore through flesh. Superman took the hits, blood staining the stone beneath him. Still, he refused to cross the line. Each fight drained him. Each victory, without killing, angered the planet. The red sun dimmed further. Between rounds, Superman dropped to one knee, breathing hard. He felt something pushing back against the red light now. Weak, but growing. Hope had weight. The final gate opened. The tyrant himself descended into the arena. The crowd fell silent. This was not punishment anymore. This was execution. The tyrant moved like a mountain. Every strike carried enough force to crater the ground. Superman was thrown across the arena, smashing into a pillar that shattered on impact. "Look at you," the tyrant mocked. "A god reduced to bleeding." Superman wiped his mouth. A god wouldn't care. They clashed again. Superman used speed he did not know he still had, dodging just enough to survive. He fought with everything: training, instinct, memory. The tyrant laughed as he landed a crushing blow to Superman's chest. Crack. Superman gasped. The world narrowed. Then the red sun flickered. Blue light spilled through the cracks in the sky. The crowd gasped. Superman felt it surge through him like breath after drowning. Bones knit. Muscles strengthened. His vision sharpened. Not full power, but enough. He stood. The tyrant's laughter died. They fought again, and this time the ground broke beneath them. Superman matched the tyrant blow for blow, refusing to kill even now. The tyrant raged. "You think mercy makes you strong?" "No," Superman said, gripping the tyrant's arm. "Choice does." With a final effort, he slammed the tyrant into the arena floor, pinning him. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Superman released his grip and stepped back. Alive, defeated, spared. The arena erupted, not in cheers, but confusion. The planet did not know how to react to mercy. Above them, the red sun cracked. The ancient machines keeping the planet under its control began to fail. The tyrant screamed as energy tore through his armor. Superman looked up. This world was breaking. He had seconds to decide: escape or save everyone. He turned toward the control spire, flying, actually flying, for the first time since Earth. Prisoners stared in disbelief as he tore through the structure, ripping out the core, powering the red sun. The sky shifted. True light poured in. Superman fell to one knee, drained but smiling. The chains were gone. The prison was broken. Hope stood where fear once ruled. And Earth was about to feel it. The planet did not explode. That surprised everyone. Instead, it changed. The red sun faded into a dull ember as the ancient machines died one by one. Gravity softened. The air cleared. Creatures that had hunted for centuries froze in confusion, no longer driven by the constant pressure to kill or be killed. For the first time in its violent history, Predator Planet was quiet. Superman stood at the highest point of the broken spire, cape torn, body exhausted, but eyes clear. He could feel his powers stabilizing now. Not raging, not overwhelming, balanced. Below him, thousands of prisoners stared upward. Warlords, monsters, survivors, beings the universe had thrown away and forgotten. They waited for a command. Superman did not give one. "This world doesn't need another ruler," he said, his voice carrying across the plains. "It needs a choice." He turned away from them and walked toward the ship he had torn from the tyrant's fleet. A vessel capable of interstellar travel, capable of one destination, Earth. He left Predator Planet without a throne and without chains. The return was not quiet. Satellites detected him the moment he entered the solar system. Emergency protocols activated worldwide. Missiles were armed but not fired. Leaders argued. Generals shouted. Some begged. Some prayed. He did not dodge them. He flew straight to New York. He landed in the center of the United Nations Plaza. No armor. No anger. No threat. Just Superman. The world froze. Cameras rolled. Drones hovered. Soldiers raised weapons with shaking hands. Superman looked at them and felt something he had not expected. Not rage. Disappointment. "You were afraid," he said. "I understand that." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "But you made a choice," he continued. "And so did I." A representative stepped forward, voice trembling. "You could destroy us." Superman nodded. "I could have. I still can." The silence was unbearable. "But I won't." He told them everything. The prison, the planet, the tyrant, the mercy he showed when killing would have been easier. He spoke of the beings left behind, now free to choose who they wanted to become. And now, he said, "I have a choice too." The world held its breath. "I won't be your weapon," Superman said. "I won't be your God. And I won't ask for permission to do what's right." He stepped back. "If you need me, I'll come. If you fear me, I'll keep my distance." He rose into the sky. No cheers followed. No applause. Just silence. Days passed. Disasters happened. A quake in the Pacific. A reactor failure in Europe. A storm threatening millions. Superman did not show up. People waited. Then they helped each other. Rescue teams moved faster. Governments cooperated. Ordinary people did extraordinary things. And when hope seemed ready to break, Superman appeared. Not above them, with them. Months later, the world had changed. So had he. He no longer hovered like a god in the sky. He walked streets. He listened. He saved lives when asked and when needed. Not because he was feared, because he was trusted. High above Earth, a quiet symbol burned into the atmosphere where he had once been chained and sent away. Not a warning, a reminder. A god was arrested. A monster was expected. But a hero was reborn.